Hello, and welcome to Argyle Digital CMO Virtual. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then I will turn things over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. First, we would like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Concentric. Our partner is committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booth from the main agenda page for this event. Their virtual booth includes complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities, so be sure to click in. Thank you again to Concentric. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please use the hashtag #ArgyleDigital and follow us on Twitter at ArgyleExecForum. Also be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. I would also like to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we have curated based on the feedback we have received over the years from our members. Argyle is very proud and protective of this policy as it reflects our commitment to ensure the neutrality and overall value of the content presented at our events. We have worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we truly appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, we would love to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box on your screen. Following each presentation, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. Thank you again for joining us. Now let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Tracy Robertson, Global Vice President of Customer Experience and Marketing at Kimberly-Clark Professional. We are excited to have Tracy with us for our opening keynote presentation titled, Let's Get Serious About Experience, Embedding a CX Mindset to Drive Growth. Welcome, Tracy. Over to you.
Thank you, Brittany. Well, it's an honor to be with all of you today and to get to spend time with you. Like any other situation where we're working virtually, if for some reason I get booted out of here, I'll make sure to dial back in or get back on. For sure, we'll make this happen. It is raining in Atlanta today where I'm based, which is never a good sign, but I think we're all used to just every situation today. So we'll make it happen one way or another. But before we get started, when I got asked to speak here today, I thought, what in the world can I share with all of you smart people that you don't already know? And then I sat back and I said, well, I am a classically trained marketer and I am an experienced person. So what do we do as marketers? Well, we always start by thinking about our audience and our customer. So I sat back and I thought, all right, let's think about my persona here. Let's think about myself. I am you. What do I know about myself and what do I know about you? So I did a little persona profiling. So I started and I said, well, of course, what I know about you is you're smart and you're thought leaders and you're strategic thinkers. And then I said, well, I also know that you're creative. So we might have some artists in the audience. This is Bob Ross, in case you guys don't know who this is. He is by just so that you know, the most popular artist among millennials. And a rising popular artist among Gen Zers. Now, I have figured out a lot of mysteries in my life. I went and watched him a few times. I always try to stay up on trends. I can't figure this one out. This guy's been, passed away 25 years ago. If anyone in the audience has any tips for me on this one, I'd love to you to send me an email or a LinkedIn message because I can't figure this one out. But this one's interesting. I also know if you're creative and you're artistic, some of you might be cat owners, maybe. This is my little guy. You actually might hear him in the background. He's very, very vocal. But I also know some of you may be easygoing and a little laid back. So maybe some of you are dog owners. Maybe you're a little bit of both. I also know that we are storytellers and we crave good content and inspiration. So maybe some of you guys have watched Ted Lasso. If you haven't, you should. It's the feel-good, series of the year. Won a lot of awards in the first series. I definitely know you've probably been watching Schitt's Creek. You may have watched it twice because we're kind of hitting the bottom of the barrel with content. Thank you, COVID. We're running out of things to watch. So I know you'll give me a little leeway on humor. I also know we're empathetic listeners. So we have to really listen to customers and be really, good at listening. So I know that you guys are good at that too. I also know that we're right brain people, right? We're very visual, intuitive. But then something really interesting happened in most of our careers. And some of us were around when this started. This stuff happened, okay? So, and it happened and it continues to happen. And so what then evolved was we became both left-brained and right-brained, which was a good thing for many of us. But what was interesting when that happened, and again continues to happen, is we became the jack of all trades, okay? Gone were the days of just doing great creative and running great campaigns. So the range of skills that we now have to bring to the table and that our teams have to bring to the table is, I think, the most vast in the organization. So, I mean, we're business technologists, not IT people, but we're getting close. We're data detectives, financial people, digital savants, strategic storytellers. I mean, the range of skill sets our teams now have to have is vast. And so I would venture to say the other thing that has made us is lifelong learners. So I know for myself, my job didn't exist 5 years ago, and I would say my next job may not exist. I am getting my MBA all over again. I mean, in the last 2 years, I've had to get my CX certification, my UX certification, user experience, my design thinking certification. I'm working on my AI ML. My MBA is kind of no longer relevant. And if you think about it, marketing teams are spending about a third of their budgets on channels they didn't know existed 5 years ago. In 2014, there were 950 MarTech solutions. Today, there's 8,000. And I read a really interesting research that said the only experience that's relevant today is the last 5 years. Now, that doesn't mean all of our previous experience isn't important, but the pace of change in what's relevant today may not be relevant next year. So you bet we're lifelong learners. I will be until I retire. So I would venture to say, my opinion only, that marketers and probably the CMO of organizations have the hardest job in the organization. Now, that presents a lot of challenges for us in our businesses and everyday life. I would say first, technology. It's never ending. Now, we're used to IoT, 5G, cloud, predictive analytics. We're all doing that stuff today. The one that I think is going to, pardon my language, kick our ass is AI/ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning. I think it's going to disrupt every function, every economy, every company, and we have to get way ahead of that because there is huge opportunities there for experience and for marketing. Unconnected and unactionable data. That is kind of the I always call it the evil of our jobs. I think there's plenty of data, but it's like, how do you connect it and how do you make it actionable and eventually predictable? And if you're ahead of that game, congratulations. But I also think that it's expensive. And so there's a huge investment, and sometimes the payoff is longer term and it's not short term. The other one is omni-channel, right? It's hard to get experience and content right in one channel. It's really hard to get it right in 8 channels, 10 channels, 15 channels. It's especially hard to get it right offline and online. And that is a really hard and frustrating experience for customers. And then all of that is a struggle for our teams to constantly adapt. Now, I think marketing is the most adaptable function in the organization because they're used to a lot of change. What's more frustrating is the other teams around us and getting them on board and used to constantly evolving and changing. But what's harder is the company and getting the company because change is accelerating at a pace that's outpacing companies' ability to adapt and keep up. So these are just all the new challenges that we're faced with as a result. And you guys are collectively smarter than me, so you could probably have 50 more on this page. Now, then we have this challenge to add to it. These people came along, are demanding and informed, more informed than ever customers. Now, we know disruption is among us. No one saw last year coming. COVID has accelerated customers controlling everything, but make no doubt about it, the purchasing public was pumping up their platform before the pandemic. Now, today's customers, and we all know this, want things faster, better, cheaper, and with a higher degree of service. We all want that, right? And technology has made that possible to get what they want. I call everything today and the desire for brainless transactions. No one has time to think, nor do they want to. I don't. I want everything in one click, and that's just how it is. Now, the other thing is our customers are changing the way that they look. In today's environment, it's the first time in history that we've had 4 generations of workers in the workforce. Now, if you do research, some people say there's 5, but most people agree there's 4. And about 60% of them, as you can see, are millennials and Gen Zers. Now, we focus all the time on millennials. Stop doing it. They're already in the workforce. The ones we need to be concerned about are the Gen Zers, okay? These are folks that, for the only generation of workers that have joined the workforce that have never had to transition from an analog to a digital environment. They don't understand why they need computers. They're fine working on their mobile phones. They don't understand why they need email. They love to self-serve. And they look at this interaction the same they do as a face-to-face interaction. So even though there's commonalities among these 4 groups of how they would like to be served and communicated to, there are vast differences. And that makes our jobs very difficult. Now, I'll tell you a true story. Last year, I was on a plane before COVID, and there were some Gen Zers behind me, and I wasn't eavesdropping. They were just talking really loud. And I heard one of them make a statement, and it was unbelievable. And I turned around and I said, could I use that quote in a presentation? And this kid said to me, sure, you want my name? And I said, no, you're not getting your 15 minutes of fame on my watch, but I'm going to use the quote. And it so perfectly summed up how I think Generation Z thinks. And he said this: not having Wi-Fi is like not having air to breathe. And I just thought it was amazing because this is how they think. So different. So I will say that Forrester Research coined this phrase in 2013 of the customer. Now, when I say this, I want you to remember this was in 2013, so insightful. The age of the customer. We have begun a 20-year business cycle in which the most successful enterprises will reinvent themselves to systematically understand and serve increasingly powerful customers. And they strongly recommended that customers invest in customer engagement in order to be prepared for the age of the customer. And they said, we recommend you invest in these 4 areas. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Number 1, invest in real-time actionable data. Number 2, invest in contextualized customer experiences. So that's going from personalized, which, welcome back, Sam, to contextualize. Hey, glad to see you back in Dallas on your mobile, Sam. Number 3, invest in sales methods tied to buyers' processes. And number 4, invest in content-led marketing. That's pretty insightful that was predicted in 2013. And I think they were pretty spot on. So all of this, right? All of this is very, very challenging and pretty relevant that's happening today. So personally, I blame this guy for everything, right? But in all sincerity, Jeff always created and designed from a customer lens. And in 1997, I think it was 3 years after Amazon started, if I'm correct, in his letter to shareholders, some people call it the manifesto, he said, among other things, we will continue to focus relentlessly on our customers. Now, that's a really brave statement. That was almost 25 years ago. Now, I consider Jeff and Amazon experience pioneers. You know, they made it harder for some of us, but they also set a pathway for some. Okay. So we're going to talk a few minutes about customer experience holistically. Now, customer experience is a hot topic, and it should be. This morning, and I always do this before I present, went out and Googled customer experience. There were over 4 billion hits on customer experience, articles, whatever. I think 3 years ago when I talked about this, there were 2 million. So you can see the escalation. Again, it's a hot topic. It should be. Why? Because brands are having a harder and harder time differentiating themselves. So they have coined that experience is kind of the new battleground for brands. Now, people get confused when I say this, so let me just clarify. I am not saying, and you cannot have an unbelievable experience and mediocre products and brands. In the reverse, you cannot have great products and brands and a mediocre experience. They both must be great, right? And the product and experience is now integrated. Customers don't look at them separately, and we'll talk more about that later. So what is CX? It's important to kind of baseline and level what it is. It's not service. You guys know this, but just to level set what it is, it's not customer service. Service is a very important part of experience, but it's just a part of it. So there's lots of definitions out there about what customer experience is. This is how my company talks about it, and it's pretty universal. You know, it's customers' perceptions of their interactions with your organization throughout their business life cycle. And that's both offline, so in-person engagement, and online. So it's a combination of both. Now, why does it matter? So I'm going to share with you some data right now. Now, the orange is B2B, the green is B2C. This data was not that close just a year ago, and especially 2 years ago. Why this is important is about 80% of customers now say that the experience they have with your company is as important as the product or service itself, and it impacts loyalty and it impacts repeat purchasing. That is huge. And I'm also going to share with you that customers no longer compare you only to your direct competition when it comes to experience. They compare you to the best service they have ever received from anyone, okay? Now that could be rockstar companies, that could be a small business or a mom and pop shop that they encounter in their personal lives. And if you think you only have to be better than your direct competition, you are wrong, okay? So that has to be real clear. It's always good to be better than your competition, but the benchmark is no longer being set by your industry. Your customers are likely getting their customer experience education from people other than your direct competition. So that's really important to understand. Your competition is not the only people in this space. Now, here's some unfortunate news. 96% of customers will leave you if they have a bad experience. And the more unfortunate news is they won't even tell you anymore. They just leave. They're not complaining anymore. Now, here's some good news. 70% of customers will pay for convenience and i.e. experience. And the good news is it's income agnostic, which means, and this is proven data, if a person makes $24,000 a year or $84,000 a year, it doesn't matter. They will pay for convenience, okay? So that's the good news. Now, what can we do about it as marketers? This is purely my opinion, so you can take it or leave it. This is just opinion based on where I sit, Again, you can take this or leave this. I think marketing, specifically marketing leaders, need to drive customer obsession at their firms. I think there's an opportunity for us to evolve and reinvent the marketing function. And don't get me wrong, because I preach this all the time, especially at my own company. Everyone in the company is responsible for customer experience. You can't be a customer-centric organization, and I almost think that's not enough anymore, unless everyone is driving the experience. And it doesn't matter if you have face-to-face interaction or not, okay? It's everyone's job, but someone has to carry the flag. And I think marketing should do that. So I'll share with you that, well, look here. So we've talked about some of this already. Contextualized and personalized content, we talked about that earlier. That's important. We have to deliver on the brand promise. Self-service, about 60% of consumers in the US prefer self-service. We will see that number go up, especially with the rise of Gen Z. We also know 70% of customers will search product information and consume content on mobile. So we always have to drive a mobile first strategy. And again, we have to drive consistent experiences across channels. We own all of this already, right? All of these things relate to experience. But unfortunately, this is expected by our customers, and it's kind of table stakes. Okay, so one of the things we have to do is we have to move from convincing customers to buy to helping customers to buy. And that means some of our language and our mindsets and how we design things have to change and become much more user-centric and empathy at the core. And what we say to customers before and during and after the sell, we have to think of it as an experience. It's integrated, it's not different. So I'm gonna share with you a little bit of some recommendations on how we do that and how we build customer-centric cultures and processes. And I'm gonna just spend a little bit of time on this. And if you're already doing this, congratulations. These are just recommendations, and maybe there's a few tidbits you can add here if you're not already doing it. The first two are just kind of table stakes, but they are, I think, the hardest. That's really setting a CX vision related to outcomes for your organization. And sometimes that requires a story for change. I know I had to do that for my organization, really bring in outside trends and evolution and some things I'm sharing with you today. And also understanding that people can't work in silos. This involves everybody in the organization. So that was a couple things I had to bring in. It's like not one department's responsibility, even though someone has to carry the flag. And then really starting with voice of customer, voice of data, and voice of organization. That's making your company more customer centric begins with two things. Number one, understanding your customers and what they value and why. And then number two, understanding their decision-making context. And that really is around journey mapping. And I know if you've journey mapped already, COVID it changed our customers' journeys, and it probably is going to change post-COVID. So there's an opportunity to, if you have journey mapping, you really need to dust that off and redo it. But it's really mapping the experience for each persona across the entire journey. So from awareness to the first contact, through the process of engagement and into long-term relationships. And then conducting a touch point audit that encompasses all departments and functions of the company, not just marketing, because that leads you into prioritizing the moments that matter. We call them moms. And those touch points have the most influence and impact on the customer decision-making process. I think people think they have to be great at everything to be a CX culture, and that's not true. Like Amazon is not great at everything, but they know the moments that matter, and they know they have to be excellent at those things, right? Ordering, delivery, So it's really understanding the things you have to be really good at that impacts customer and doubling down and being great on those things. And then embedding experience into the culture. That's really about employee experience, because you can't be customer centric and CX and not do employee experience, but that's a whole other presentation. But people really have to understand that part, even if they don't have day-to-day interaction or face-to-face interaction with the customer. And then finally, measuring. And this is about defining goals, not just by internal expectations, but how customers define success. Now, we have internal KPIs. Obviously, we have to measure success and ROI, but all of our digital assets, like our websites and distributor portals, et cetera, have an external measure. It's called a QX score, quality of experience score. Now, internally, we call that a customer experience score because it's just easier, and it's actually part of our organizational metrics. It's a numeric value from 0, which is very poor, to 100, which is amazing. That's made up of behavior scores, so that's based on tasks completed, and attitude scores, that's how they feel, usability, trust, loyalty, and that's made up of 4 scores. So number 1, ease of use, so how easy to navigate, use. Appearance, so aesthetic, attractive, do they find it clean, simple. Loyalty, will they return? And then of course, NPS, would they refer a friend? So we do that because we always have an external score and then our internal measures. So those are just some recommendations. Now, on the flip side, I just want to make sure that we don't confuse fixing things as being enough, because I think companies think, well, if we fix our processes and we have rock solid moments that matter, that's enough. And it's not. That alone does not drive loyalty. Delivering easy and convenient interaction experiences creates great impressions, but it's not enough, right? It's personalized interaction experiences is not a game changer. It creates no lasting. It's not enough to create lasting impact on customer loyalty. Gartner recently came out with some very compelling research that said that sometimes CX teams will focus disproportionately on fixing elements of the interaction experience, and they don't focus enough on product experience. And that's actually how the product performs and how customers feel about the product. And so what you have to do with product is you have to enable customer self-affirmation. So it's helping them feel confident about their purchase decision and the value they derive from it. That's what really drives lasting customer loyalty. So bottom line, it's empathy at the core. How we design, how we speak with customers is an experience. The product is now integrated in the experience, and customers do not separate the two. And then the pre and post interactions are all experience elements. So what is the payoff? Whoops. What is the payoff? I'm not going to read this to you, but this is just a couple stats. I had a ton that I could have shared with you. This is well researched, well documented, well published. It pays to be an experience-driven business. It's more revenue. It's higher growth in repeat purchase, retention, customer lifecycle value. It's faster revenue in the door. And so, again, I'm not going to read these to you, but I will say though, this is not a quarter by quarter payoff. Doing this type of work takes a while. I'm this at my organization for 2.5 years, and we probably have another 2.5 to go. Experience work takes a long time to embed it and to change in the organization, but the payoff is definitely worth it. Bottom line, it can be a competitive advantage for your organization. I think it's one day going to be table stakes for most companies because customers are going to expect it, and it's a driver of future growth. So thank you everyone for your time today. I appreciate it. And if anyone wants to follow me or send me messages through LinkedIn, this is my information. And at this point, I think Brittany, happy to open it up and take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Tracy, for such an insightful presentation. Looks like we have time to answer at least one question that came through, so we'll jump right in. The first question we had was, how do you measure customer experience in order to know when you need to improve it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, Brittany. How do you order customer experience when what?
How do you measure customer experience in order to know when you need to improve it?
Okay, so you have to, it's a little bit of a confusing question. I'll try to do the best I can to interpret it, but I think the first thing you need to do is you need to do a baseline. So that's where we didn't know where to start because we had everybody in the organization was kind of doing their own thing. So we said, we need to get a global baseline so that we just know where to start. And we did that in 3 ways. We have a complicated ecosystem of customers. So we did a NPS score, which is kind of old fashioned, to be honest with you, but there's nothing better at this point. We did a customer effort score, which is relatively new, to just say, how hard is it to do business with our organization? And then we did a CSAT score, and we just baselined and then said, where are the areas where we really have to dive in and do more qualitative research to understand where we have real serious issues. So first thing is just baseline, and then you have to dive in because the quantitative data is not enough. And then you find your areas where you go run some regression analysis, and then find the areas where spots, and then start doing the qualitative analysis. And then those 2 things together will say, I think these are some areas where we've got to start working on as an organization. I hope that answered it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tracy.